We are back with you live once again for another Johnny Torch Live broadcast. Number 166. Execute Order 66. Yes, and this is the only way to spend your Saturday here with us with a Torch News Roundup number 144. But I was about to say this is the final Saturday before Hangouts on the Air is going away. Hopefully yours truly will be able to be with you again next Saturday. I'm not sure exactly how this works. I don't know what kind of software I'm going to have to do to get the show back on track after Hangouts goes away. I'm sure it won't be that difficult. There's some kind of other procedure you do here. I actually tried it once before to try to broadcast live, but it's more difficult. I don't think it's something that you can prepare for. You know what I mean? It's not something that you set for hours in the future. Is that the way it goes? I don't know. We'll figure it out, I'm sure, one way or another. Maybe I'll try to do another broadcast maybe Wednesday on the 31st, and we'll try to get some precious hours together before this possibly goes away. I don't know. It's sad at worst, amusing at best. Okay, so I just put the chat room up in case there are any eager listeners and viewers. I start the show a couple of minutes early. I'm impatient. What can I say? So let's take care of business before we get straight into the stories. Not a lot to talk about this week. I don't think it's going to be a very big show. Of course, I'm long-winded, and I'm sure it'll be about an hour as usual. But please hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. We lost a couple of subscribers. I'm not going to I'm not going to make up any excuses. For some reason, we lost a couple of subs. We're trying to get to 100 subs by the end of the year. I've been bringing you quality content, mind you, for, what is it, 3 years now? I guess I'm not that sentimental as I thought. I don't even remember how long I've been broadcasting. But yeah, so be sure to share, tell all your friends, check out Johnny Torch Live, particularly the Torch News Roundups. We always endeavor to get them on every Saturday. And, thumbs up hit that thumbs up button as often as possible. I'm sure that'll help us get our broadcast before many more screens in mentions and so forth. All right, first off, before we get to the news, before we get to the first order of business, I said I was going to talk about my book a little bit before last week's show, and we didn't have time to do that because it was the Comic-Con show, and there's just too much to talk about during Comic-Con. But the Bullets Bourbon Chronicles, that is what we're calling the graphic novel collection of the When the Night Comes story arc, is finally out there for purchase. I haven't put the link up yet on my website. That will be forthcoming. But it's remastered. I took care of all the little errors that drove me crazy, and it just looks magnificent, glorious, in a word. Glorious. And it's just the dream of a lifetime to actually see a graphic novel I've created from beginning to end be represented so magnificently. It's magazine-sized dimensions, and in full color. It's just the full story. One of my favorite stories I've ever written, and it's just a wonder to behold. And of course, it's the story of Bullets Bourbon, the private eye, who is pressed into service as a secret agent by a top secret government agency when it's found that his two most nefarious villains, Carrot Top, the evil mastermind, and Pencil Neck, the crazed killer, come and join forces. And of course, there are other surprises and excitement along the way. Let's take a look here at Sour Note, the murderous maestro, as we call him. And it's just a very exciting story. I always loved villain team-ups when I was a kid, and I couldn't wait to get both of Bullet's main adversaries together in a team-up issue and throw in a bonus villain here in Sour Note. I'm kind of regretfully going to have to say that I think what's best for the book is if I go back and remaster the first 3 issues. Now, this is something that I've gone back and forth on a lot of times because I personally, I don't have it in me to do the George Lucas thing. I can't go to the old material and keep tweaking it and sprucing it up, but it definitely needs the sprucing. It needs remastering. So rather than do the sneak preview I was going to do, as I did on Twitter, of Bullets Bourbon issue 7, which I'm very excited about, we're going to put that off probably until spring of 2020. And I'm going to spend probably the next 4 months minimum, possibly 6 months, working on the remaster of Bullets Bourbon issues 1, 2, and 3. Again, I feel like I owe it to the readers because I think readers really want to start at the beginning. They want to start with issue 1 and work their way through it. And I've done it kind of backwards in this way, where I did the graphic novel of issues 4, 5, and 6, and I'm sure people will be looking for issues 1, 2, and 3, and you can still only get them in their, what I affectionately term, rustic format, meaning that the first issue is colored by hand with markers and pencils, which is not a bad look, and the first 3 are completely hand lettered, which again is not terrible. But I want them to be uniform. You know what I mean? It's kind of a lingering issue that I think needs to be addressed. So again, not to take too much time up, but we're going to be working on the remaster of issues 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to postpone issue 7. It will be done, and it will be done definitely sometime in the first quarter of next year. But for now, we're going to work on issues 1, 2, and 3, get them remastered, have them in this beautiful format, and again, keep track of my website that you can find in the description below. The link is in the description below for Bullets Bourbon Comics, and I will be putting that link up for the for a limited time. I always do this for a limited time until they put the book on Indie Planet. I always offer a few copies uh, autographed on my website, so I'll be getting that up in the coming days. But again, it's a dream come true, and I'm very pleased with it. Also, check out the link in the description below for my Twitter page, where you can find out all the ongoing comings and goings of Bullets Bourbon in the Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Private Eye. So, with that out of the way, let us continue on now to the news of the day. We're going to start off. This is a story that I will admit caught me completely off guard this afternoon when I saw it. There is potentially a Rocky VII in the works. Now, this is kind of difficult because with Creed 1 and Creed 2, those are kind of, aren't those de facto Rocky 7 and 8? I mean, it continues the Rocky story. Obviously, Adonis Johnson / Creed is the focal point of that story. But I think if you're looking at the linear tale of Rocky, you can't just, bypass Creed and Creed 2. But apparently, this next film that Sylvester Stallone has planned is not going to be a Creed sequel. This is not Creed 3. This is going to be a proper sequel to Rocky. Let me take a look here at my notes. The Italian Stallion continues to tease and openly talk about making more Rocky films, as well as a potential prequel TV series. Well, that's pretty interesting. Now, that's something I've said all along that would be a good idea. I will say, though, I'm not sure a TV series is the way to go with it. I think Rocky would probably exist better as a movie, a Rocky prequel. I think that's better off as a movie, because I don't think you can, I could be wrong. I don't think you can drag that storyline out for more than maybe 2 movies or 3 movies. Young Rocky and, his, apparently from what we know about Rocky in his early years from the movie Rocky, he came to Mickey for help, didn't get that help, and sort of just plodded on as a leg breaker. And he had some past with Paulie. They were apparently friends for a long time. And maybe as a backdrop, we could also see the rise of Apollo, doing his own thing across the state, in LA, and his rising to become champion. That could be also something that might maybe pull the story out into a decent, let's say 3-season television series, maybe. It's possible. It's possible. As far as the TV show, I mean, as far as the movie goes of Rocky 7, I don't really know where else you take Rocky, particularly without Creed, without Adonis Creed. I mean, they're kind of bound together now, and it will be kind of odd to just have him carry on without any ties to Creed. I don't know. Okay, from Variety, the prodding question. Any possibility that Rocky would reappear on the big screen someday with you in the role? To which Stallone replies, there's a good chance that Rocky may ride again. I remind you that Stallone, after Creed 2 wrapped, he did a tweet or an Instagram post or something that was pretty, I think it was pretty blatant, that he was saying he was finished with the role of Rocky, that he felt that was, that was all he could do with Rocky, and that's basically where he was going to let it lie. I always felt that maybe there could be another Rocky film, but like I said, I don't know where you take it from here. I kind of hesitate to say Rocky 2 was Creed 2, excuse me, Creed 2 was a disappointment. I thought it was a good story, but I kind of pumped it up a little bit when reviewing it, because I think people should see it, because it's a pretty worthwhile story, but it should have been directed by Stallone. It should have been handled by Stallone, because a lot of the best things that they could have done with that story pretty much were left in the margins. We only got one meeting between Drago and Rocky, and it was a good meeting, but there was no second or third meeting during that movie, which would have really, pumped it up a lot. We didn't see Rocky meeting or reintroducing himself to Apollo's widow. I forget what her character's name is. Felicia Rashad. In the movie, that was sort of a buildup. They hadn't seen each other for 30 years or something, and it sort of happens off screen. There was just a lot of potential in Creed 2 that it didn't really rise to, and that's why I think you're not hearing a lot of talk about a Creed 3, and Stallone himself is not sort of pumping up a Creed 3, because I think they sort of wanted to cut him out of that storyline. The whole idea of him not directing it was a telltale sign, where they wanted to make it more Creed's story, and people are really coming to see more of Rocky. You know what I'm saying? They really wanted to see the Rocky Drago drama and stuff like that. And like I said, there was still a lot of drama to mine with with Apollo's widow, and yet they didn't go any of those places that would have made Rocky shine or Stallone shine. And I think that's probably the reason why he's going to go in a different direction with the character, rather than, concede to do another Creed movie. I mean, maybe there will be a Creed 3. It'll probably be without Stallone, I imagine, from what he's describing here. Okay. Even then, Stallone has yet to truly rule out another Rambo movie after Last Blood, which is interesting, because with the title Last Blood, it sounds like. But see, Stallone's good that way. He's not one of these, set in stone actors that are like, I'm never going to play this role again. And then 35 years go by, and then it's like, well, maybe I'll do one more. You know what I mean? He kind of keeps the door open. And he's honest about it. So that's cool. All right. The plot for Rocky 7, Stallone offers up this bit of information, which he mentioned before at Cane's. Rocky meets a young, angry person who got stuck in this country when he comes to see his sister. He takes him into his life, and unbelievably, adventures begin, and they wind up south of the border. It's very, very timely. So again, this doesn't sound to me like it's wired into boxing, you know? Is this just going to be sort of a road adventure between Rocky and another kid? Because we've already kind of had that story a couple of times between Adonis and between Tommy Gunn. just doing it over again without, I mean, basically doing with Adonis was doing it right. You know, that's sort of the protege being taken under Rocky's wing. That was done right. In the form of Tommy Gunn, of course, it was the protege gone bad, you know, the bad apprentice. I don't really know where else we can go with this at this point. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it would make for a good story. I'm not sure. When asked if the story would touch on the immigration issues in the U.S., Stallone continues, yes. Do you tell someone that you just met in the street who's struggling and homeless to get out, or do you take him in? If you take him in, you're in trouble. So again, this might be kind of politically tinged. I don't know if that's also a way to go with the Rocky franchise. I mean, Rocky franchise was always pretty topical, I suppose, when you think about Rocky 4 and so on and so forth. I don't know. Maybe it's interesting. Maybe it's the way to go. It would probably be the first time I'm guessing, Hispanic character would be figured prominently in a Rocky film at any rate. I mean, because, of course, Hispanic, Latino boxers are, you know, very prolific in the sport. Let's see. Stallone also commented on rumors of a Rocky prequel TV series, most probably on a streaming platform, along with original Rocky producer Irwin Rink. I'm getting tongue tied. Irwin Winkler. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's the brother of the Fonz, right? Irwin Winkler. Say that 3 times fast. Stallone on his conversations with Winkler. There was some conflict there, yes. He felt in his mind that Rocky was primarily a feature film, and he didn't see it as being translated for cable, so there was a big bone of contention. Yeah, I kind of agree with Winkler on this one. I think I said before, it seems more fit for a movie. But then again, see, I think Stallone wants to keep the movies for himself. I mean, it just seems that way. And not do like, because a prequel, you have to have a solid cutoff, start and stop date. You can't just like continue on and redo the whole franchise. After the prequel, it goes into Rocky in 1976. So I guess this would be also a period piece set in the late 60s, early 70s, maybe at some point. Okay, as far as when these projects might come to fruition, Stallone says they want to go tomorrow. Now, I don't know. I don't know what that means. To interpret it, I could go a couple of ways. They want to go tomorrow could mean that the producers and studios and what have you want him to get working on this tomorrow. It could mean that Stallone has these ideas so fully mapped out that if he got the green light tomorrow, he'd start production. I'm not sure which one is the accurate interpretation. So, if we were to theoretically build out Stallone's action movie schedule for the next few years, that leaves us not only with another Rambo movie after Rambo 5, but also a Cobra TV series, which is also in the works, a Demolition Man sequel, which has been rumored for some time, and possibly a cliffhanger reboot as well. So, going into his golden years, Sylvester Stallone is working hard. He's getting all his past projects some kind of remake or reboot or sequel at this point. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Do you like the idea of a Creedless Rocky 7? Do you like the direction that sounds like it's going in? Do you like the possibility of a prequel TV series, probably a period piece set in the late 60s of Rocky, you know, learning to be a boxer and so on and so forth, meeting Paulie and Adrian, possibly having Apollo doing his thing in the background? Might be interesting. I think it might be interesting. But let me know in the comments below. All right. Next up, this is an interesting thing to me because I'm a fan of the original Thor film. I think that's one of the best Marvel films. Let me take a sip here. Excuse me. All right. The beverage of choice today is another one of those store brand knockoffs of this is just of cola flavor. All right, but it gives you a couple of seconds more, a chance to look at the lovely Kat Dennings, whom we haven't seen in the MCU since Thor: The Dark World. Again, I also like Thor: The Dark World. I know it's usually routinely at the end of people's lists, and I don't know, I kind of dig it. I know it's nothing special, really. Uh, people rag on Malekith and some of the more goofy humor. I think Kat Dennings was actually really good in the first Thor. I thought she brought a really good, comedian sense to the film. The Dark World was a little bit more broad, with Selvig running around naked, and then there was the intern that was sort of nameless. That was not the best of comedy, but I think a lot of people sort of take their abuse out on Kat Dennings for those two movies for whatever they don't like about them. But she's an accomplished comedian. She, of course, had that TV show, Two Broke Girls, and did very well for herself. And I think that the show is over now, right? I don't know. I never watched it, really. So she's, free and available for Thor: Love and Thunder. But will she actually make the cut for the cast? Now, you got to remember, Natalie Portman hasn't been in the series since The Dark World either. And they're going to have to probably reestablish her. Would it be smart to reestablish her as still being around Kat Dennings' character of Darcy? I don't know. I mean, they kind of. What was the last we heard about Jane? She was off somewhere and doing her own thing, and then she kind of dumped Thor. I always thought that was a pretty pitiful way to end their relationship. I'm one of the few people that liked it, the Thor and Jane relationship. But seeing as how now they're going woke, MCU is going woke, and they want to put Jane Foster in Thor's place, they're going to have to find a way to reconnect them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a love interest again, or a couple again. Quite possibly, it's not going to go that way, but it will be interesting to see how they bring Jane back into the fold. Now, let's see. Kat Dennings, was quoted. Let me see. I'm trying to find the source. Comicbook.com quoted Kat Dennings on whether she would show up in Thor: Love and Thunder. Let's see. She says, "No one has talked to me, and even if they had, I definitely couldn't say anything about it. Oh my God, I am such a huge fan of his. What do we do in the shadows?" What we do in the shadows. I guess that's the name of the movie. I don't know. She's talking about Taika Waititi, by the way. Is one of my favorite movies ever, so it would be an honor to work with him. But I have no info. None. Thor: Love and Thunder hits theaters November 5th, 2021, and production is due to take place in Australia. So, these actors and actresses, they like to play coy. I'm not sure if she hasn't been broached of the subject of being in the movie. So, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this is something that's is this something that's worth? See, I just realized I didn't have the next story's image ready, so this is what this is what I think. I heard Ethan Van Sciver call vamping, when you're just trying to talk, and you're just trying to talk for the sake of it here, because I'm trying to pull up the next image. All right, but let me know what you think. Uh, should Kat Dennings return to the role of Darcy Lewis, I think that's her name, isn't it? For Thor: Love and Thunder, or Thor 4, as I am bound to call it. All right, let us move on now to our next story. I didn't have an image up for this. Of course, I could have just left Kat Dennings up. I mean, I wouldn't have had a problem just looking at her for this story, but it had nothing to do with her. So, all right, we've got some talk about Venom 2. Venom 2 is in the works. They are going to do it. Tom Hardy is set to reprise the role of Eddie Brock for Venom 2, which will also feature Woody Harrelson as Cletus Cassidy, a.k.a. Carnage, as the main villain. Andy Serkis, who we've last seen as Ulysses Klaue in the MCU, is rumored to be up for directorial duties. Let's see. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the actor turned director recently flew to Los Angeles for a meeting with studio higher-ups and is one of several filmmakers being looked at to helm the sequel. Serkis is obviously best known as an actor and is widely regarded as a pioneer of motion capture performance, having brought to life the likes of Gollum from Lord of the Rings and Caesar from Planet of the Apes. He was also The Last Jedi's Snoke and appeared briefly as Ulysses Klaue in Black Panther. However, he does have a bit of experience behind the camera, having served as second unit director on the Hobbit trilogy before going on to direct Breathe and Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle. Variety is also reporting that Sony is considering Travis Knight and Rupert Wyatt also for the gig. So it could very well be one of those three. I'm not as familiar with the others, but of course, Andy Serkis, he's a talented guy. I mean, people, I think, sort of just think of him as the motion capture guy. You got a creature, you got some kind of a otherworldly character, you put in Andy Serkis, but I've always enjoyed seeing him play live action roles the most. I mean, he's a very enigmatic actor. And, I'm not too familiar with directing, his directing style, but, if he wants the job, he probably could handle it. Because with all the CGI symbiote stuff, I imagine it would be right up his alley, knowing how to direct things that aren't there necessarily. All right, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited for Venom 2? Are you excited for Andy Serkis potentially being the director? Let me know. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit here. This is not, there's no real story accompanying this, but since we're talking, Marvel and so on and so forth, the Falcon and the Snowman, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I have to imagine that they kind of knew that's what isn't that sort of what that's evoking? It's evocative of the Falcon and the Snowman. Now it's Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But I digress. This is a picture of Daniel Bruhl as Baron Zemo. Are they going to call him Baron finally? I really want them to call him Baron Zemo. I think his last name is Zemo, but did they say what his first name is? I mean, his first name could be Baron, even though, I think it was a title in the comics. But if they're obviously going a different way with this version of Zemo, I don't know. So, yeah, first images of Falcon and Winter Soldier where Daniel Bruhl is on set as Zemo, and we have another image here. That costume don't look too bad, but this, I don't know, this is the mask. And I don't know, I gotta say I'm kind of disappointed. This is, of course, like hazy footage of him doing some kind of terrorist video or something. As I said on Twitter, I mean, I really want to see a really, really purple pie man, plum pudding, dark purple mask. I don't want to see some kind of ski mask that he looks like he just picked up from Dick's. You know what I mean? He's got to wear the real purpley purple of purplish purpleness purple. Can't tell with this shot. Can't tell in the scene if that's really purple or not. But again, they're going for that realism thing that the Russos did a lot with Captain America, which I wasn't crazy about. I mean, I know it's tough. I know it's a tightrope because, like, for instance, Batroc the Leaper, he didn't really have a costume, and that's kind of a goofy concept. And I understand you don't want to just give him a sort of a goatee and a purple jumpsuit, but you kind of have to tie these things really close to the comic. You know what I mean? Baron Zemo, I think, can exist in a very comic articulate costume in live action. I don't think there's a need to really play with it too much. I said this before, but I'm really disappointed that he never got a chance to go up against Chris Evans' Captain America. I remember when I was a kid, I had the Secret Wars action figures, and that was my introduction to, well, I don't want to say it's my introduction. I read the comics. I knew who Zemo was, but I'm saying he was a famous villain for Captain America when I was a kid because he had the little Secret Wars action figures. Came out like in 84, 85 or something. And, I was excited to have a villain from Captain America because they never sold the Red Skull. Red Skull is a tough sell to sell as an action figure, I guess, because he's got ties to the Nazi party and stuff. Although, isn't Baron Zemo also a Nazi? I can't remember. He's got ties to that as well. I remember I loved back in the day, they had those like long play records, and they had one of Captain America with Baron Zemo, but it was the son of Zemo, and he like chained the Falcon into a watery pit or something. He was going to drown him. Captain America had to come. I remember it was a very moving story. He was trying to get revenge for his dad, and they did a lot of good with those records back in the day. I remember that when I was a kid. And what I'm actually working on right now is I'm reading some Marvel Masterworks. And it's really getting me inspired again to make a video about comics, about the classic days of comics. I did like one or two things about comics on my channel. I haven't gotten around to it as much anymore because it's a lot more work. You got to do a little homework instead of just reading headlines like I'm doing here. But I'm reading the Steve Englehart run on Incredible Hulk from the 70s. I think he ended. Was it the 80s? No, I think he did the whole run in the 70s, and it's coming up like on the Wolverine first introduction, and then I think he left the book and it went to Len Wein. But yeah, maybe I should do a video about talking about that. So if you're all interested in that, let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll do a live stream just talking about how great that is, because I miss. That was the greatest era of comics to me. I know a lot of them, they say the 90s. No, 90s can't hold a candle to mid-70s to mid-80s comics. That was the sweet spot for me. That was the greatest era of comics. And of course, it was a little bit before my time. Like I said, I've read some of these things like The Incredible Hulk at Bay, which is, I believe, an Englehart story from the 70s. That was what was translated into the record. And I read that story never knowing the whole thing. So now I'm getting the whole story. I'm reading the preceding issues. I'm reading the following issues. And it's really exciting to have something new back in that era when comics were so great. Because, of course, as I've said many times, my favorite hero is the Incredible Hulk from that period. That was the greatest period for the Incredible Hulk. And haven't done enough, I haven't seen enough of that era. And that's something I'm really getting into now, and it feels like such a breath of fresh air considering what we have nowadays. Sadly, what we have nowadays for these characters, I think the wheels of despair started turning probably as early as the 90s, but it just, I don't know. For me, the Hulk ended with the Gray Hulk. Once they started doing Gray Hulk and all that stuff, that was it. So for me, it was probably even the late 80s. But there's a golden age, there's a bronze age. For me, that's a golden age, the Bronze Age. That's when comics were still at their best. And, at least we still have them to go back to, considering the sorry state we're in right now. All right, I'm waxing eloquent there, I know. Let's continue on here with the next story. Let's see. Black Widow. Oh, yes, more Black Widow news. Now, this is pretty exciting. I have no idea what this image is from. I don't know if that's on the set. I don't know if she's leaving the set. But that's her. That's Scarlett Johansson from the set of The Black Widow. All right, let's see. I tried to get some... There's a leaked video of the trailer where you can't really make out any of the images because the guy was obviously scared to death to raise the camera below his belly button. So you really can't see much. And you can hear a lot of it. although I really couldn't make out who's speaking, and a lot of it is, it just goes by too fast. But I tried to find some kind of transcript. So from Comic Book News, I think has got this one. They described the footage as follows. We see Natasha meet with Yelena Belova in a standoff, and it's clear that they've both been trained by the same people. It reportedly feels a lot like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, in terms of action, and the fight between these two sounds amazing. Natasha refers to Yelena as Sis, and after a number of action shots like car and motorbike chases, we see Black Widow emerging from the wreckage of a car crash, and she fires at a masked man heading towards her. He holds up a shield and blocks the bullets. It's not clear whether this is Red Guardian or Taskmaster, but a battle then begins as the footage winds to a close. All right, so this is interesting because I didn't know Red Guardian was in this. Didn't I say this all along, that my dream Black Widow movie would be to have the Red Guardian appear? I doubt they're going to use him the way I want them to use him, because he's originally supposed to be the Black Widow's husband. They're probably not going to go there, but it's interesting. I hope they do us proud. And that's probably Taskmaster that they're talking about, because we did see the image of what the Taskmaster is going to look like with the shield and everything. So I'm guessing that's who they're talking about in that scene. All right, speaking of the Red Guardian, let's see. I'm trying to find the notes here. Okay, joining the MCU is, let's see, David Harbour as the Red Guardian, Alexei Shostakov. Okay. Harbour said not a lot of people know about him, but he is essentially the Russian equivalent of Captain America. That's one of the things I really like about this character. There's an openness to interpretation. The one thing we do know is that he's the counterpart of Captain America on the Russian-Soviet side. But that way we have a lot to play with who he is, and we are playing with him. That's a pretty complex sentence, but it sounds to me more like they're not going to do that wedding storyline. They're not going to have been wedded at any point, I'm thinking. I don't think they're going to make them a couple. That's disappointing. He is really rich. Initially, when I heard the pitch, director Kate Shortland was like, he's this, and he's this. And I was like, yeah, I got it. He spins and he twists and he turns in ways that make sense, and in ways I don't expect characters to go there. I expect characters to be a color or a flavor, and we really get to know them, and this guy is really rich. In that way, I really am blessed to play this super three-dimensional character in this movie. Sounds like he's having a hard time trying to describe the character without giving something away, so I don't know. Maybe I can hold out hope. Maybe I can hold out hope. Let's see. Shostakov has been a long-time agent of the KGB. His history in the comics isn't so black and white, so it's unclear what to expect from the Red Guardian in terms of being friend or foe to Natasha Romanoff in the film. Speaking to Rotten Tomatoes, Harbour seemed to suggest fans will be in for quite a few twists. He's a very surprising character. You sort of think in the beginning of the film he's one thing, and then he becomes very much another. There's a lot of movement to his character, a lot of arc. There's all sorts of humor and heart, which I think is in a lot of these Marvel movies. All right, so there you have it. We are getting the Red Guardian. He is going to appear, and hopefully he is going to be, I don't know. I was going to say Mr. Black Widow, but I don't know. I don't know how that would work. All right, let's see. Now we've got our story, our headline story here. Let's get this one done. Big rumor coming out that JJ Abrams, yes, that JJ Abrams, is rumored to be signing up to take over the DCU ostensibly. Okay, this was from an article from Cosmic Book News, Matt McGloin. So we're going to read some of it here. Let's see. My understanding is that a big reason why J.J. Abrams recently signed the mega deal with Warner Brothers, which I don't know. I think I don't have that part in the notes here, but I think what did he get, 500 million or something to sign with Warner Brothers? I'm not sure. It's weird. I don't know. Let's see. He wants to tackle the DC movies. Abrams was actually attached to Superman Flyby years ago. That's the first thing. Clap warning. That's the first thing. I remember the script for Superman Flyby back in the day when people did online petitions not as frequently as they do these days. And it was a disastrous script. You can go out and find it. And there was so many people signing the petition to not get that movie made. And that's why I've always said I don't think J.J. Abrams is the right man for the job when it comes to something like Superman. I mean, he's already contaminated a couple of franchises. Do we want to see him contaminate Superman now? Green Lantern, ostensibly? I don't know. I mean, as I've always said, you can look at what he's done with Star Wars. You can look at what he's done with Star Trek. He can get the tone and flavor of something right, but he's not an idea man, you know? He doesn't really come up with the greatest of stories. So if he's just going to direct, and I would trust his color palette in that case. Is he going to come up with a story? That's another thing. I don't really want to see him spearheading these movies as the writer, as the idea man. He's more there to just, like I said, the color palette. Like I said, he sets a handsome table, but he shouldn't be cooking the main course. That's somebody else's job. All right, so let's see. He's going to do movies for Superman and Green Lantern first. I've also been told that Abrams' wife, Katie McGrath, was responsible for getting Ann Snarnoff named as the new chair and CEO of Warner Brothers. That's not all, as guess who was best buds with Abrams? Yep, the Batman director, Matt Reeves. So we see how everything adds up. It's also known that WB passed on Mission Impossible director Chris McQuarrie and Henry Cavill's Superman pitch for a Man of Steel 2 and Green Lantern, which according to what I've been told is because of Abrams' own plans. So, I don't have specifics about what Abrams is going to do with Superman and Green Lantern, but the question of Henry Cavill did come up. It seems to be that Abrams is leaning toward casting a younger actor as Superman to go along with Pattinson as the new Batman. Superman can't be older than Batman, is what I've been told. Which I don't understand this. This is what they did in the Snyderverse. Batman is not supposed to be older than Superman. I think, if anything, Superman should be older than Batman, but they are supposed to be contemporaries. I don't see it working as both of them. You know, it shouldn't be that. I'm trying to think of, like, when you see, stuff like The Dark Knight Returns and this and that. It's okay to have Superman a little bit older, because then when they both get older, Bruce is still like a contemporary of his that he can, keep up with them. But they're supposed to be about the same age, you know what I mean? I've always pretty much imagined that they came out around the same time. I don't think Batman was a vigilante in hiding for 10 years and then suddenly Superman comes on the scene. I've always felt Superman was the first hero, in the DC universe. He came out and slowly but surely other heroes followed, probably Batman 2 weeks later. But at least that's my interpretation of events. Let's see. Henry Cavill is actually only 3 years older than Robert Pattinson, but possibly by the time J.J. Abrams gets a new Superman movie off the ground, Cavill could be nearing 40, while the 33-year-old Pattinson will start filming on the Batman at the end of this year or early next year and is slated for a trilogy. So obviously they want to get them both together for another Batman-Superman team-up or something. I don't think it's going to be versus anymore, thankfully. But it's difficult because Cavill's in a bad place because I guess, you have to remember that we still got Jason Momoa and we still got Gal Gadot, and they're not going anywhere. So if you're going to say, well, Batman had to be replaced, so we have to replace Superman, that really isn't going to fly. There's a lot of talk about how they could get around this with a multiverse and this and that. It's so darn complicated. To be honest with you, I think they need a Crisis on Infinite Earths more than the CW show does, which we're going to talk about that in our final topic here. But let's get through the rest of this. Let's see. That said, the talk at Comic-Con did lead to basically everyone agreeing that Henry Cavill is a great Superman and that he will be very difficult to replace. I suppose if there is some sort of fan campaign similar to release the Snyder Cut to keep Henry Cavill as Superman, that it couldn't hurt. It's known Henry wants to stick around, the DCEU as Superman, and that he's loved by the fans, so maybe Abrams will take that into consideration. I've also been told that the creatives in such a WB would like to do another Justice League movie, but that they're trying to get things right and are instead presently focusing on character-driven movies, which, yeah, I would think that would be the ultimate goal, is to finally get us back to Justice League and give us a Justice League 2. The whole big problem with this, the whole big problem was Zack Snyder, I have to say. I'm sorry to say if you're a Snyder fan. But if he hadn't crapped up Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, we wouldn't be having this problem right now. That's why I don't care about the Snyder Cut. From what I hear about it, it's terrible. It's like a borderline suicidal Batman. And, oh, man, it doesn't sound good. Superman was just a dirge. I mean, Man of Steel was just a dirge and a sad, boring, pathetic movie. Batman v Superman I thought was a little more palatable, went down a little easier, but it's still a murderous Batman who is sort of just a psycho. He just got it in for Superman, and Superman also being morose as usual. That's what just set this off on the wrong foot. I still maintain if they would have started off as they intended with Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern, just make a better sequel. Don't look back. It would have been better off because Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern was not horrible. It wasn't a great movie, but it wasn't horrible. I mean, the biggest problem I found with it was, like I said, was Hector Hammond being the main villain. It's like having Elephant Man as your main villain. It just didn't really. It didn't get the DCEU off on the right foot. But you give us a better sequel. You had Mark Strong, who is also in Shazam now. I just watched that the other day. You have Mark Strong just playing a pitch-perfect Sinestro. You could have built on that. Do the Sinestro Wars. Ryan Reynolds, some might argue he was, more suited to Deadpool than Green Lantern. He was still a fine fit. They could have just went on from there, but they balked at what they were trying to do, and they says, let's get a serious-minded auteur in Zack Snyder, and then everything went to hell. So it's like, how can we discount the first two movies in the franchise and still keep, like I said, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, people that are doing great work, but they're tainted by association with the original films and the Zack Snyder films in the canon. It's a headache. I don't know how to get around this. I guess there's got to be a way. In the superhero genre, there's always a way. There's multiverses and different types of chicanery you could use to pull a different Batman actor in and make it work. I mean, I don't think it would be too difficult to just change the actor, because I knew, like I said from the beginning, I've always said this, but we knew Ben Affleck wasn't going to stay around for more than 2-3 pictures. He was going to do 3 movies, I think, and that was it. Ultimately, I think he did 4 if you want to count the cameo in Suicide Squad. So if you want to replace him, you shouldn't have made him look like Old Man on the Mountain. You know what I mean? He looked like Batman from The Dark Knight Returns, which is obviously what they were going for. But then you can't just keep replacing him with actors and making him, keep replacing him with a 45-year-old actor that's going to be replaced in 2 films. So that was kind of their problem in the first place. All right, let's move on now to our final story of the evening. This is sort of also very much rumor mill stuff. Grist for the rumor mill, as they say. But we have CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths apparently is going to bring in just about every every superhero that was on television and possibly in the movies for this crossover and have them all appear as the character they portray. They're going to get all the actors back and try to portray them as their corresponding character. Now, this is exciting because when we first heard about this, I was overjoyed because it was John Wesley Shipp's Flash. And I have made no bones about it, saying that that is the greatest superhero TV show of all time. That very brief season of The Flash, to my mind, the greatest superhero show on television, bar none. You can make a case for Batman the Animated Series, but certainly in live action, The Flash. So they brought him back, and they kind of unceremoniously gave him 2 scenes, and it was the most exciting scenes in the entire crossover, but still they didn't do enough with him, which is making me wonder what they're planning to do with all these other actors that they're hoping to bring in for brief appearances. All right, let's get to this here. Let's see. So far confirmed, Elizabeth Tulloch is returning as Lois Lane, along with John Cryer, who will reprise his role as Lex Luthor, alongside Tyler Hoechlin's Clark Kent / Superman. We also already covered that Brandon Routh will also be suiting up as a Kingdom Come version of Superman. Possibly his Superman from Superman Returns, that sort of strange offshoot that nobody talks about in the Superman universe. Let's see. LaMonica Garrett will also be pulling double duty as both Monitor, the extraterrestrial observer he played last year in Elseworlds crossover, and the Anti-Monitor, the crossover's big bad. So he's going to play both parts. Meanwhile, the Flash's Tom Cavanaugh, who plays the many versions of Harrison Wells, is also confirmed to play Pariah. This will be interesting because I think this is the first time Cavanaugh is not going to be playing a Wells, because that's kind of the gimmick, right? He's the Wells of every planet. But Pariah maybe is the Wells of whatever planet they're from. I don't know. Pariah is a pivotal character from the Crisis comic who works for the Anti-Monitor. Pariah is very much integral to unleashing the Anti-Monitor into our multiverse, which then more bad things happen, said Flash showrunner Eric Wallace at San Diego Comic-Con. For Tom to play such a pivotal character, not only is it exciting, but I think his interpretation that he's going to be bringing to it is going to just tear your guts out and make you cry. Okay. The CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths is shaping up to be huge. Now, this is the rumor part of it. This is the rumor part of it. Okay. Let's see. It's taking on multiverse proportions. Characters from across DC's film and television continuity throughout the years are reportedly ready for an appearance. That includes incarnations from Warner Brothers' extended universe. According to Cosmic Book News, an anonymous source at San Diego Comic-Con told the site, Crisis will feature characters from all or most of the DC appearances on TV and from some of the movies. This is pretty exciting. You know what I would want to see the most? You know what I want to see the most? I want to see Michael Keaton back as Batman. That would be something. That would be a mind blower. That would be something. I'm not a big fan of the Burton Batman because, again, it wasn't very faithful in the killing and this and that, but he was a great Batman, though, Michael Keaton. Let's see. Specifics are still being worked out by but studio lawyers and execs are on edge, reportedly over what this ambitious plan will cost. If they and the Arrowverse people can't reach terms, showrunners might resort to simple clips from movies like Man of Steel. In short, a flyby from Henry Cavill will have to do. DCEU characters and actors won't take precedence since the crossover is a CW affair, but Warner wants to showcase more alternate Earths than they ever have before. Connecting the DCEU to the overarching multiverse is a priority. 2 Superman can be confirmed already, Tyler Hoechlin and Brandon Routh. let's see. Now, this is from Bounding Into Comics. I pulled from a couple of different sources from this. According to Bounding Into Comics, Tom Welling will also be back as the Clark Kent Superman from Smallville. Now, this is something a lot of people have been clamoring for all along. They want to see, because the CW started off with Smallville, and it grew a lot of fans. Like I said, I personally wasn't a big fan of the show. I haven't been on the bandwagon for this because I didn't really like what they did with Clark Kent by dragging his story out for 10 years. And I kind of blame Welling on that because he refused to put on the costume up until the series finale, which, again, is dubious because I think he was just superimposed through CGI into the costume. Let's see. Joining him will be Linda Carter as Wonder Woman once again. Now, this is something more exciting to me because, obviously, Linda Carter is the quintessential Wonder Woman, and she hasn't come back to that role in any style or fashion since she hung up the tights. Since she hung up the what's the line? I'm blanking now. Satin tights. And her satin tights fighting for our rights. And the old red, white, and blue. She hasn't worn the costume or provided a voice for an animated version of Wonder Woman or any other type of media for Wonder Woman since hanging up the satin tights in the late 70s, 1979, I think. So if we can get her back as Wonder Woman, that would really be something. I mean, she still looks great, of course. I doubt they're going to give her the Wonder Woman costume, the familiar Wonder Woman costume from the 70s. But that would be a lot of fun. Now, the rumor also has it that Burt Ward is going to be, I think, a guest on Batwoman. And that the rumor is, of course, that he will be portraying Dick Grayson from the 66 universe, all grown up, obviously, so he's not going to be wearing the tights either. But let's see. As a tribute to Adam West, the Batman of that Earth will already be dead and will not be recast. West will embody that incarnation of the Caped Crusader, passed away in 2017, and fittingly, the role was all but retired like a jersey number. So, yeah, this is really epic. This is something that, if true, again, it's kind of rumor still. If true, this would really blow out all the barn doors. This is something I think everybody's going to want to see. They're smart to try to get as much attention as they can because their shows stink. I said that last year. The best episodes of any of the shows last year, which was a pretty dismal year for these shows, was the crossover. That proved to me that they can do exciting and classic comic book stuff should they ever put aside agenda and set about to do it. But unfortunately, they don't set about to do it nearly often enough. I feel like, in a sense, I would like to just get DVDs of the crossover and and put aside the actual seasons. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it all shapes up. We'll see how it works out. Let's see. Yeah, that's about it. So, thanks again for joining us. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Any news that you want me to cover in any form, any shape or form, let me know in the comments below. I read all the comments and mailbag segments. And of course, just by all means, check out The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Private Eye in the link in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, the link also in the description below. Hit like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know what you think about the possibilities of the show now that Hangouts is going away. I don't know. I'm still concerned. I'm still very much concerned. All right, so thank you once again for joining me here on the only way to spend your Saturday here with us on Johnny Torch Live for another Torch News Roundup. And I will try, like I said, to see you again sometime next week. I think probably likely on a Wednesday. I will try to do another live show just for the sake of it. Maybe it'll be that Hulk show, that Hulk appreciation show that I was talking about with the comic. Do something a little different, maybe. We'll see. We'll see. Let me know what you think. And until next we meet, this is Johnny Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.